Despite the festivities, tension mounts in the countdown to the referendum in southern Sudan. Will the vote in January be a referendum that can go either way in Africa's largest state? Or is it just a formality before the declaration of independence for the south of Sudan? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Imran Garda. Sudan's progress on organising a key referendum on the future of the South is too slow, according to those instrumental in ending decades of civil war in the country. The referendum will decide whether the South will remain as a part of Sudan or become an independent state. Scheduled to take place in January, the vote was promised in the 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement, also known as the CPA. The Sudanese central government has organised an awareness campaign to highlight the importance of the vote among southerners living in the capital, Khartoum. However, leading southern politicians have taken the opportunity to call for independence, raising hopes of establishing a new state in the south. Rallying among the more than 1 million southerners living in the north is not unusual, but it is a strong indication of the rising tension before the crucial referendum.
The people of the South are counting on the political leadership, and we tell them that by July next year, there will not be a first vice president, there will be a head of government and a president of the South Sudan state.
Well, to discuss this issue, we're joined by our guests in Khartoum, Lam Akol, chairperson of the Sudan People's Liberation Movement Democratic Change, the SPLM-DC. Also in Khartoum, Thomas Wani, head of SPLM Parliamentary Bloc. And in Oxford, Douglas Johnson, author of Root Causes of Sudan's Civil War. Gentlemen, thank you, all of you, for joining us. Thomas Wani, if I could start with you. Norway's diplomatic chief says progress on organising the referendum is too slow. Is that fair?
Thank you very much. I would like to appreciate Jazeera satellite for having given us this opportunity to discuss over the vital issues at this crucial time that Sudan is undergoing. Machakos protocols clearly stipulated that in Article 1.3 that the Southerners have the right to determine their rights. Therefore, the time is approaching, and the Southerners are already prepared to vote for determine their destiny on the 9th of January 2011, and people are ready for that. Although there is a slow motion on the preparation on that, yet Southerners are ready for that.
But won't that slow motion, as you put it, hinder the holding of that referendum in January? It's not too long to go, 3.5 months.
That slow is caused by the partner, the NCP, and that started right from the enactment of the bill of referendum, which is according to the CPA is supposed to be on the beginning of the third year of the interim period, but delayed until last year. And even then, if the SPLM members in the national parliament had not worked out and boycotted the session for almost 2 months, the bill will not have been made ready. Therefore, this motion is deliberately made by the NCP not to allow the Southerners to exercise their rights on time.
Lam Akol, I've been reading some of what you've had to say in the weeks and months in the build-up to this referendum, and I gather that you don't believe the time is right. Why not?
Well, I hope I'm not quoted out of context. What I'm saying is that the referendum is a process that takes time, and it was anticipated in the CPA that it was going to take 42 months to complete. But as things turn out, you know, the two partners are equally responsible for the delay that has taken place. The SPLM has been behaving as if the National Congress was going to dismantle its own system on its own, and this is contrary to what Dr. John Garang said, that the regime was too deformed to be reformed. They just forgot that too quickly, and they thought that the National Congress on its own will work things out so that the referendum is done in good time. But anyway, we are now on the threshold of an important historic decision for the people of Southern Sudan. We were the first to call for self-determination for Southern Sudan because we believe that Southern Sudanese have the right to determine their future. The movement was talking about a unity of Sudan when the rank and file was talking about separation. The only democratic way of resolving that and keeping the movement together is to have the self-determination, which is a democratic exercise. Now, as things go, for the last 6 years, the government in Southern Sudan has not prepared the ground for the Southerners to be ready. I'm told now they are not. The process is, we have not yet started
Let's
the
try and find
campaign
out.
among the people to...
Let's try and find out from Douglas Johnson. Douglas Johnson, would you agree that in the past 6 years, both the northern and southern leadership in Sudan are to blame for not providing the fertile ground in the build-up to this referendum, and that perhaps it could possibly not be the best opportunity to hold this referendum in the south?
Well, I really can't answer in detail about what each side should have been doing to prepare for the referendum. Certainly, legislation should have been put in place long before now. That could have happened. There are various other aspects of the CPA which could have been done before now, but which were not, such as the demarcation of the border. I think that what has to be realized is that this is the one chance to settle a long-standing political problem that has plagued the Sudan since before independence. And since the terms of the CPA are quite clear, the referendum has to happen. There is no precondition that would stop the referendum from happening. The referendum has to happen, and it has to happen next year. I would hope that both sides would stop bickering and that the international community would also offer the technical support that they can for fair and transparent registration and a fair and transparent voting system.
Douglas Johnson mentioned borders. Let's talk Abyei for a little bit. The Abyei area straddles both North and South Sudan, and on the 9th of January 2011, they are scheduled to have a referendum of their own. Like other Southerners, Abyei citizens will vote whether to remain as part of the North or return to the South, but in a separate ballot. But whether the vote will go ahead is uncertain. The NCP have cited that a lack of clear borders in Abyei makes a referendum impossible. Though this comes despite the Abyei Boundary Commission laying out borders in 2005, a decision President Omar al-Bashir chose to ignore for 3 years. After conflict in the region in 2008, the issue was referred to the International Court of Law in The Hague. Their decision was supposed to be final and binding. And though it was publicly accepted by the ruling party, in July of this year, they said the tribunal's decision did not resolve the dispute and that new solutions must be found. Well, the ruling National Congress Party has suggested making the Abyei region an economic integration area, with its people holding dual citizenship and sharing its oil revenues between the North and the South. Let's go to Mr. Wani there. What do you think of that idea from the ruling party? Do you think it's ridiculous?
Thank you very much. Before I answer the question, allow me a second to reply to what Dr. Lamakol said about that the SPLM is to blame regarding the ground on the Southern Sudan is not prepared for that.
Okay.
Southerners are prepared for the referendum, and the whole history he narrated about himself by then was the prominent member of the SPLM, and he was in the National Liberation Council, the body that has a decision making, and he is a part of that. The question is, what did he do then if I told the SPLM were not doing enough? That is one. Number two, Mano Aligo and he himself, both of them were working contrary to the roadmap to the policy of the SPLM in the parliament. That is why there was a delayment on the tabling of the bill of the referendum. Coming to your question about Abyei, NCP has a delaying tactics of not forming the commission for the referendum of Abyei that is supposed to take place concurrently with the referendum in the southern Sudan, so that it can be postponed. And that is the strategy of the NCP normally of violating any agreement signed. And as it happened in Khartoum Peace Agreement in 1997, when it is signed with the defected group of the SPLM headed by Dr. Riek Machar and Lama Kolim himself, and that agreement was signed and nothing implemented. Dr. Lama signed for sure the agreement with the NCP, nothing materialized. Therefore, NCP is dragging feet on that, is working harder to drill the CPA. That is why it doesn't want to form the commission for referendum so that the referendum cannot take place on time.
Okay, let's get a response. Can we get a response from Lamakol? There are quite a few loaded accusations there. A few accusations, Lamakol. Come in.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. First of all, I must agree with what Dr. Johnson said, that the referendum must take place. That is, there is no question about it. It is a demand of the South that was agreed upon by all the northern political parties, by the way, those in government and those in opposition. What we are talking about is the preparation for that referendum, because it must be done in a fair, transparent manner so that it gets the recognition it deserves, because it is a once and for all exercise. As to what my former colleague said, we don't want to be making propaganda here on this forum. He said we were working against the policy of the SPLM. Let him deny the fact that what we did was true or not. I mean, was it against the policy of the SPLM to say that we must have a bill for referendum in time, in good time, so that the National Congress does not put drag on it? I mean, you see, the problem with such propagandists is that you are working with a partner that you know very well, and you are accusing that they are not interested to implement the CPA. So if that assumption is correct, then you must be seen to be keener than the other side. Don't provide excuses for the other side to also fail to implement his side of the bargain. As to Abyei, that problem actually has been very clear from the beginning. As you know, the protocol in Abyei has never been worked out by the parties. They did not negotiate it as like other protocols. As you know, that protocol was a paper, in fact, a two-page paper that was prepared by the former U.S. envoy, John Danforth, and presented to the two parties on the basis of take it or leave it. And of course, both of them, for tactical reasons, they accepted it. But I don't think that they were really committed to that protocol. And as you said correctly, that the borders were demarcated by the court in Hague, and then both sides claim to have accepted that decision. But the population on the ground, if people on the ground can extol a decision of the government, and then there is a failure of the government to do that, then what do you say about it?
Yeah,
the president
it's interesting.
Bashir,
it's going to be interesting to see how the people in Abyei actually
and the first
vote
vice
in the
president the first vice president is Kiir, who is Salva Kiir, who is in the SPLM.
Right. Let's go to Douglas Johnson. Douglas Johnson, do you think that the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is exaggerating when she says that the referendum is, quote, a ticking time bomb? Or do you agree with her?
Well, I wouldn't use that language myself. I think we all have to realize that time is running out to be able to organize a referendum that everybody can see is free and fair. If it isn't seen by those who participate in it to be fair, then it will not resolve this political issue. There are a lot of things that have to be done. There have been threats made on both sides of the border, in Khartoum and in Juba, about what might happen if the referendum takes place. and what might happen if it doesn't take place. So there certainly have been threats of violence, threats about going back to war, which the international community and the guarantors of the CPA have to take seriously. But I think this is the time now to be very clear about what has to be done, and for the international community to help the two sides get out of this problem, to be able to set up the referendum properly.
Thomas Wani, one of the arguments against Southern Sudan becoming independent, if as expected the Southern Sudanese vote yes, is that will it be able as a state to stand on its own 2 feet? Is there state infrastructure? Is there going to be the developmental and humanitarian requirements? What sort of state will it be? Will it be a weak and fragile state, or will it be a proper state ready to take on the mantle of being the newest state in the world in 2011? Those are valid questions, aren't they?
Thank you very much. Southern Sudan is ready to be a nation on the sense that before the CPA, there was physical infrastructure on the ground. All the building on the infrastructure all demolished by the war. But imagine the 5 years that the government of Southern Sudan has been in power, there is a lot of improvement on the ground. Therefore, the Southerners are ready to have a new nation. And of course, you cannot build a nation in a day, but it goes gradually as time goes on until the whole things are put right. Therefore, the referendum is not measured by the development of the ground, but is measured by the will of the freedom. Southerners have suffered for a long time, for over half of a century. Therefore, they want to determine their destiny, whether the development is there or not, but they need to be free so that later on they can do whatever they can do. As long as you're free, you can build whatever, you can even make development, you can make services to the people when time comes. In addition to that, these 5 years that have just gone, we were depending entirely on the wealth sharing from the north. And the 50% which was sent to the south, imagine the bulk of the work and the demands on the ground, that money has not been sufficient enough to carry out development and the services. Therefore, although the infrastructure are not there and rest of the things are not there, but the Southerners are ready, are determined to get their state, then the development can take later on. The most important thing is the freedom.
Okay.
And
let's pose that to Lama Cole. Lama Cole, freedom first, development later. There's a very passionate argument. Is it idealistic and naive, or does it have some sense? What do you think?
It's absolutely naive, because you know that as a matter of fact, I will agree with him that the man on the street will not differentiate between what he wants to decide and the consequences of that decision. But I thought that the people at the helm of affairs should be the ones to be really careful about where they're driving the people to. It is not true that the South was demolished. This is absolutely nonsense. As you know that the Southern Sudan inherited the buildings of the High Executive Council. All the ministries were there. What they were needed only was just repairs. The Southern Sudan received in excess of $10 billion US from the oil money alone. It receives more than $3 billion in terms of the budget allocation of the South within the national budget. It receives millions of dollars in terms of the multi-donor trust funds.
Yes, but that's what the South takes from the North, Mr. Cole. But 80%, sorry to interrupt you, 80% of Sudan's oil wealth is in the South. Isn't that the only reason Khartoum may want to hold on to the South, and no other reason?
The problem of lack of development in the South is not that we are not getting enough money. This is my argument. Even if we get the 100% of the oil revenue, with the current corrupt government that has established a system of where now most of these ministers are millionaires, and the man on the street has not seen the change in terms of services and in terms of not to talk of development. So it is not true to say that we had inherited nothing, and therefore in the last 5 years we could not have done much. Actually, it is in the last 6 years. It's not 5 years anymore. In the last 6 years, the South have not been, shown the example of what it will look like if it becomes an independent state. So that is a worry by some people. But as I said before, the man who is going to cast the vote tomorrow may not be in a position to see what it means, because the language of people like the speaker, who, he forgets that his party, the SPLM, had when it signed the comprehensive peace agreement, has committed itself to work for the unity of Sudan. We have not.
Let's get a final comment from Thomas Wani before we go to Douglas Johnson. But Thomas Wani first. Thomas Wani, do you want to respond?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you. To my respect to Dr. Lamakol, what he said, he himself was a prominent member in the SPLM, and the whole thing that he talked about is quite aware about it. Southern Sudan was totally ruined. All the towns were ruined. They were air raid, air bombardment, artillery guns, all the buildings, not only that, but even the remnant of the iron seats were brought to the north. Nothing was found. We inherited south, totally nothing. Now, what he said that we inherited building, yes, that is true. There were buildings of the Executive Council, but they were not proper.
Been in the hands of the SPLM. The SPLM has not captured Juba or Wau or Malakal, for that matter. How were they bombed? Who bombed them?
I'm sorry. In 1992, Dr. Lamakol knows all the events that took place in the south. And when we talk about south, we don't talk about Juba or Malakal, but we talk about the areas outside Juba, outside Malakal, outside Wau. When we talk about southern Sudan, we talk about the whole area. When I talk about ruining, I don't mean only Juba or Malakal or Wau, but I mean the whole area is all over the southern Sudan.
Okay.
So nothing was totally found.
Okay, gentlemen, I want to go to Douglas Johnson for a final question here. Douglas Johnson, looking broadly at Sudan as a state, would a breakaway in the south maybe only create a greater impetus for the Darfur rebels, for example, in the west, to look at the example of the south and maybe not commit to a peace deal and say, okay, it may have taken a lot of bloodshed and many, many years for the south to break away from the state of Sudan, but it could be used as an example by the Darfur rebels to maybe get their own state at a point in time?
Well, I really don't know if the Southern Sudan is an equal example to Darfur. The Southern Sudan right now is much more integrated into the regional economy of Northeast and East Africa as a result of the war than it was in 1983 when the war began. It has far more going for it than Darfur does at this moment to become an independent state, both in terms of its international connections, its trade connections, its resources that are currently being developed, and its potential resources. So I don't think that the Southern Sudan would be an equal example for Darfur to follow. Had the CPA been implemented in a different way, had there been a real attempt to make an equal unity as part of the CPA, the Darfur problem might not have carried on as far as it did. But I don't think that you can connect the two conflicts in exactly that same way. The South has had a much longer period of political agitation, has made a much more consistent argument for a unity based on equality, and if there is no unity based on equality, reserving the right of self-determination. I don't think Darfur has gone through the same political trajectory.
Interestingly put. Gentlemen, thank you very much, all of you, for your contribution here on Inside Story. It was a pleasure hearing all of your thoughts, and thank you, the viewer, for joining us here on this episode of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye.